Now, floods triggered by Storm Boris have claimed several lives in Central Europe. At least 6 people have died in Romania and 1 each in Austria and Poland following days of torrential rain. Authorities in the Czech Republic report 4 people are missing as well. Thousands more have been forced to flee as water levels continue to rise.
The remains of a bridge lie in the water in the historic town of Giulia in Poland. The river destroyed 2 bridges and burst its banks, leaving the picturesque town submerged. The authorities have urged residents to flee to higher ground. But the situation is even more threatening in the nearby town of Klocko. Officials say water levels in some areas are already 2 meters high, and they're rising after a dam burst further upriver. Hundreds of people have been evacuated.
What next? I don't know. I can tell you that I am helpless.
The government is urging people not to stay in areas at risk.
The situation is very dramatic in several places. I once again urge people to follow more closely the recommendations of the firefighters and the police.
Across the border in the northeastern Czech Republic, the situation is no better. Record rainfall has cut off towns and villages around the mountain town of Jeseník. These pictures underline the risk to firefighters as they seek to evacuate those trapped in their homes. In this case, the firefighter did make it to safety and the evacuation went ahead. The military has sent in a helicopter to help with evacuations. Flood warnings are in place for around 100 locations across the Czech Republic, but Jeseník is the worst affected. In Austria, the Vienna River and the Danube are both badly swollen and have burst their banks in some areas. The entire state of Lower Austria, which surrounds the capital, has been declared a disaster zone. The authorities here are warning the situation is set to get worse.
Let's speak to Matthew Cappucci. He is a meteorologist and atmospheric scientist. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us. Now, Storm Boris dumped a month's worth of rain in just 24 hours. Why is that?
Yeah, so the setup was really weird. It began with something called a trough, or a dip in the jet stream. The jet stream, a river of winds in the upper atmosphere that kind of goes like this normally. But this dip, this trough, dove so far south that it allowed a pocket of low pressure, so cold air, low pressure, and spin, to kind of become nestled within this dip. And what wound up happening eventually was this low pressure basically detached from the rest of the jet stream, almost like a whirlpool. If you go through a pond, if you're kind of paddling through a pond, one of those little whirlpools pinches off the oar, same thing here. And so this basically cut off low lived a life of its own, sat over Central Europe, sat and spun, and whipped moisture up and around it back into the Alps, leading to excessive flooding, lots of rainfall, and very harsh conditions that we really see once on, say, a century on average.
Well, just a week ago, the same area was seeing a heat wave, now this. How do you explain that drastic shift?
Yeah, so we see the jet stream, we see the kind of ups and downs, the crests and troughs of the jet stream propagate eastward over time. And so if the jet stream is going slowly enough, we're under a ridge, or kind of this crest of the jet stream, which allows for high pressure with warm, hot, dry, sinking air, making for really warm weather and temperatures well above average and a dearth of precipitation. But in this case, that's kind of moved on to the east. Now we have this low pressure, and it's doing something called upsloping, or basically forcing moisture up the mountains. As the moisture is forced uphill, all the water in the air is squeezed out like we're wringing out a washcloth, and it comes down as heavy rain, or high in the Alps, lots of snow. So in the upper Alps, folks have seen 1, almost 2 meters worth of snow. In the lower elevations, lots of rainfall on the order of 30+ centimeters in spots, and unfortunately that precipitation is flowing into rivers, wreaking havoc and leading to serious flooding.
Is the prediction that the rain and flooding will continue over the next days?
I think by later Tuesday into early Wednesday, that upper level system, so again, the pocket of cold air, low pressure and spin, or that cutoff low, will finally start to move. But remember, it's been here since like Thursday, Friday, and that's why it's such a nuisance. It's not that the system itself is incredibly intense, it's that there's nothing to really move it because it's detached from the jet stream. That's why we call it a cutoff flow. And so it sits there and it spins and it just drags more moisture in. And that's exactly what's been happening. I think the upper level flow pattern will finally favor to kind of skedaddle out of here towards the early to middle portions of the work week. But until then, we still have more moisture, we still have that moist flow, and we still have that flooding threat.
That's atmospheric scientist Matthew Cappucci. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for more, we can speak to journalist Bruce Pannier in Prague. Bruce, hi there. Tell us, what's the situation like in the Czech Republic?
It's been getting worse as the day goes on. I've been watching the newscasts. In the morning, it looked like it was under control, but by the time the sun started going down, they showed various areas of the country that were underwater, you know, at least a half a meter of water up against houses and people walking in the streets with big waiter boots. And so it has deteriorated quite a bit, and they're expecting that it's probably going to get a little worse. The northeastern part of the country seems to be the one that's getting hit the hardest right now. Your previous reporter mentioned Giulia. It's in Poland. Apparently the dam burst upstream from them, and that flooded Giulia. But there's places not very far away in the Czech Republic, one place called Česká Ves and another one called Jeseník. And they are also, the most recent photos showed that they're inundated with water at the moment. And in fact, there was even photo of the military having to come in and rescue one of the residents of Jeseník, I believe, by helicopter, because apparently the whole town is now cut off because of flooding.
Just an incredibly deteriorating situation, as you say. Bruce, tell us, how are Czech authorities responding to all this?
You know, I give them a lot of credit. They took all the measures they could before this. I mean, everyone's been warned since the middle of the last week that this was coming. They cleared away debris from under bridges, from canals. They fortified the banks of rivers. They have been doing preemptive evacuations of people for the last more than 24 hours now. It was 10,500 people evacuated, but I can see from the news that 200 more here, 33 there. So it's probably gone up quite a bit. So, I do credit the Czech authorities with doing what they could, mobilizing 100,000 firemen and volunteer firemen ahead of time, too. The reality of this storm has been overwhelming, I think, for everyone in the country and certainly for the authorities. They knew it was a once-in-a-century storm, but you can't prepare for everything that you're going to get until you see the reality of what happens.
That was journalist Bruce Pannier in Prague for us. Many thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared.
DW's Giulia Saudelli is in the southern German city of Passau for us. Giulia, hi there. What's the situation where you are?
Well, the situation here is not as dramatic as we've seen in the neighboring countries to the east, like the Czech Republic. There was a break in the rain. In the past few days, it was raining a lot. There was a break yesterday evening, and this morning it started raining again and rained throughout the afternoon. But the city is ready in case more water were to come in the next few days, and I can show you how they've been preparing. For example, here, this road, which runs alongside the Danube River, has been closed. People can't drive their cars here. And as we see, the street here in behind this area that has been blocked off is filled with water, and it's not really high, but the water had been coming from the Danube, from the river right there, but also from the drains. And the city has also started preparing by putting up sandbags at the ground floors of buildings and also putting up barriers in front of doors on the ground floor so that water might be able to stay out. So the city is waiting and preparing, but in the meantime, the really dramatic situation is right across the border in Austria, which is very close to Passau. Now there we've seen that especially in the area of Lower Austria, which surrounds the capital, Vienna, the situation is dramatic. And a fireman has died while trying to work in a home that had been flooded. And even in the city of Vienna, where the Vien River runs through, the river is not completely overflowing, but it is very high. And in some parts of the city, some foot and bike paths along the river have been overflown. So there is quite a state of alert also in neighboring Austria right now.
And we've just been looking at some pictures of that, Giulia. What can we expect in the coming days?
So we've heard from meteorologists that the rain is expected to move to the west, so coming from the eastern countries compared to Germany, from Poland for the Czech Republic into Germany. And experts expect that possibly the highest level of the rivers here might only be reached tomorrow, on Monday, or even on Tuesday morning. So the situation is currently one of wait and see. There is an additional worry brought in by the experts. They say that the level of snowfall is going to go up. That means that there's going to be possibly more rain coming down instead of snow that will also contribute to rivers rising. And we're going to see that probably in Bavaria, but also further north in the eastern state of Saxony, where the Elbe River comes in from the Czech Republic, and a high is expected there possibly tomorrow or on Tuesday.
Situation of wait and see. Giulia Saudelli in Passau for us. Thanks, Giulia.